makes their own decisions and everybody makes their own choices, but they're not the only ones that suffer the consequences.
Welcome down the rabbit hole, friends. I'm going to take some time this evening to finish chapter 6. I just finished a bonfire outside with the kids. Everyone is in bed, and it's a perfect time to finish up this chapter. So when we left off, Jim Bob and Michelle had just gone ahead and given Derek and Jill approximately $80,000 in order to compensate for the time that they've spent on the show. But they've asked all of the rest of the children to sign a contract in order to receive that money. Jill and Derek so far are refusing to do so. And I can confirm that Jeremy and Ginger did not sign the contract either, that they went forth and created their own contract, which Jeremy ensured gave him some flexibility and ability to do certain things with his own life. It's here that Jill talks to us about how she and her sisters are going to several law firms, and they're asking them if anyone will work with Jill, Jessa, Jana, and Ginger in order to go forward with suing the county for releasing the information. Okay, so Jill and Jessa, they've gone to several law firms. The other girls are involved too. They're trying to find out if anybody is willing to work with them to come forward with a lawsuit against the county related to the investigation that happened with Josh and the fact that they gave out the girls' names and personal information. And, you know, that's very important to Jill, and that's really emphasized here in the book. If you read the book, you'll get a better understanding of how important this is to her. Finally, and I thought this was really interesting, Jill states that what happened is Jeremy Volo helped the girls find an attorney. He found someone in LA who was willing to take their case. He kind of set it all up for them. They all met with the guy and the law firm, and she really credits Jeremy for putting everything into place for her and her sisters to be able to go forward with this lawsuit. She says that Jim Bob's response to all of this, there's good and bad. He says that, I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so glad that you found somebody, basically, to take the case. But then he also adds on, I would be very careful about how you approach all of this. Jill writes, you know, we just got the show back up. So, I mean, I'm sure Jill is just feeling like, I'm tired of all of this pressure on me specifically, but on the other girls as well, to keep the show up. When you raised us to believe that the show was just for a period of time, it was an opportunity for a period of time, God gave it to us and would take it away, and it would never be any big deal to anyone. And now it's a huge deal. And you have to keep the show, and we have to keep it for you. So there's a little bit of that going on in the background for Jill, but she's still trying to see the best in her family and the best in her dad. Jill and Derek are finally able to arrive back in El Salvador, and shortly after arriving, they actually receive like a phone call or an email from a huge missionary organization called International Mission Board. And they had been waiting for a long time to try to get in with this organization and do missionary work. And apparently it's kind of like a grueling process. Part of the process is like, it can take several years of you like, I don't know, tithing and being part of this organization for you to be selected for it. And they had just come up as having spent enough time in the organization to be selected for missionary work. So they receive a phone call, and the organization tells them, like, we're interested in you. We would love to have you come on board. But guess what? This all comes crashing down, crumbling down for Derek and Jill, and this is a big part of this chapter. Jill literally describes it as, it felt like we'd found gold. They wanted to do this so badly, and they felt this was the right organization for them. It was very professional. They were excited about the opportunities. They sent missionaries all over the world, Jill writes, and they suggested we would either go to Spain or Panama. They started to work with the organization to figure everything out and begin the process of moving out of what they're doing now to going in with this International Missions Board. But of course, everything that's happened with the show and Jim Bob comes back to bite them in the butt once again. Before the International Missions Board can fully accept them and get things rolling, they need to know that they don't have any contracts with anyone in the United States that would require them to come back from the mission work This is a specific thing, like one of the very important things they must be able to show the board. And guess what? Jill and Derek are able to say, like, we didn't mean to sign a contract, but we do. We have been told that we have a contract that we've signed with TLC. So the missions board says, oh, whoa. Yeah, okay, so can you get that taken care of? Get that like null and voided. You say that it's not real, so let's get that taken care of. And then we can meet back up and start getting you rolling with coming on board and doing all of this with us. Well, guess what? It's not to be for Derek and Jill. It's so sad. This is what they wanted to do. It was so important to them. And Derek specifically says to the man who's in charge of getting them started with this company, we're happy to cut ties with anything filming related. They don't want to do it anymore. They don't want the money. They don't want, now Jim Bob is going to start paying people and they don't want to do it. They no longer want to be a part of this missionary work that Jim Bob is doing. So Jill and Derek, they go back home and they draft an email to Chad, and I'm sure they also forward it to their father, in which they say, like, we want to be null and voided from any contractual obligations that we have with you guys. We're ready to go forward with our own lives and be able to do this kind of missionary work. But unfortunately, the fallout was instantaneous. TLC started sending several emails. Chad started calling and emailing. Jim Bob was also kind of losing it, but I think more so letting Chad try to handle everything with Jill and Derek. And essentially, this cat and mouse game started for Jill and Derek, where they were requesting TLC to give them something that said that they were released from any contractual obligations. And TLC just never did it. They never made it happen. Jim Bob didn't do anything to make it happen. Chad didn't do anything. They kind of, at the end, were like, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do if you want to leave the show. But they never gave the letter which stated they are released from their contractual obligations. So the bottom line is that Jill and Derek were never able to join this lifelong dream that they had to go into the missionary work with this very well-known missionary board. During this time, Jill and Derek, they're still living in El Salvador, and Jill lets us know they're losing friends, local friends, left and right. I mean, this is not easy work that they're doing, and all they're asking Jim Bob and these people, I mean, talk about rich men north of Richmond, she's asking these rich people in Hollywood to essentially give her a letter stating that she's released so that she can go and do this work where she gets paid nothing and gets no payback from it, and they won't do it. They won't let her go. She's having a lot of sorrow about leaving El Salvador, and she's also just looking around and seeing like all the heartache that people are experiencing there, and she writes about it here in the book for us. In the background, the money that was supposed to be going through fundraising by Chad and Jim Bob and the show to Dillard Family Ministry was gone. It was dwindling down, and they were out of money, basically. So a lot of the things that Jim Bob and the show had kind of sort of promised them weren't really happening anyway. So they were realizing that if they didn't get in with the board, they wouldn't be able to do their missionary work on their own. And of course, Chad and the TLC, they come to Jill and Derek and they're like, by the way, we know you're like 6 weeks away from giving birth, so we just want to check, are you going to be filming for the show? And Jill and Derek are like, hell to the no. No, we're not doing that. And after they said that, Chad sent them an email letting them know that he would no longer be able to work for Dillard Family Ministries and was resigning from their board. Interesting, right? He could only help and work with them as long as they were doing the show. I mean, if I was Jim Bob, I would be questioning and caring about a lot of these things. Why is this going down like this? If anything, I've done this show for all of these years so that my children could go forth and carry the word that I've been espousing all this time to other places, to other people, to less fortunate people. So if the show isn't going to help with this ministry, that's a problem for me. I'm going to give my own money. I want the show to help out with it. I really believed that they were fully Jim Bob would be fully willing to help Derek and Jill with their ministry, with their missions trips. And this book lets us know that he wasn't. He literally didn't give an F, you guys. I'm kind of breaking the fourth wall here, but I think this is a really important part of the book for all of us to kind of register in our heads, that he wasn't really supporting them in the way that most of us feel like we would have supported a child or someone that we loved if we had the money to do so. Again, I just find this so unfair and disgusting. It's gross. Jim Bob's over here funding the crap out of Josh's games, his car lot, the fact that he had to go to rehab. I'm sure he pays for Anna and Josh's children to have certain things that Anna wants. I don't know if you've ever seen Anna's Instagram, but those kids are dressed so freaking immaculately, like all wearing the same outfit. I'm sure that Anna buys used and saves the difference, but there was money. It's clear to me that there was money being funneled into Josh's life somewhere. They're buying big houses. They've got the car lot. They'll have nice cars. So, I mean, he's getting support from someone. And from everything that I've read and heard since the trial, in the background of everything, Josh was just a big part of Jim Bob Duggar's financial, Jim Boob's financial empire. Okay? He was a really big part of it. Josh was a part of like working with his brothers behind the scenes, managing things. My understanding is that he had some control over where investments went. So, I mean, I think that Jim Bob was like, he's never going to be able to have a real job or like do anything real with his life. So I better get him something going in the family business, which is essentially making money off my daughters, which I then funnel to my sons. I hate to say all that because I've been very forgiving and full of grace towards Jim Bob and Michelle, but I do think that's what we're seeing in this part of the book. There's a part of what's going on in the background in which Jim Bob is funneling money to the people that he prefers. And the moment you're not, in it with him and 100% gung-ho about what he wants to do, you're taken off the list of people that are going to get that financial gain from him. So finally, it's Jill's understanding that she's done with the show. They still have not given them the piece of paper that says they released them from their contract, but they're done with it. And she says she has a feeling of sorrow and gratitude, relief and anxiety, of feeling happy that this was all behind us. At the same time, I was wondering what was going to come next. And in this part, this is really sad for me. She talks about how nothing was ever really said about it. No one said anything on the show. And she says there was no goodbye party. No goodbye, Derek and Jill. Good luck to you. And she says, part of me still wonders why they didn't bother to explain to viewers why we left. But part of me knows that it didn't matter. Okay? So she knows that there's some background of Derek being frustrated, and it is mentioned somewhere in here. He was frustrated, so he was getting online on Twitter, and he would, make statements about certain things. I think he made a statement about a transgender person on TV and how he was very concerned about them putting this on TV and allowing this person to transition when they were so young. Okay? Now, a lot of people have said, and I think this is kind of Jill's take too, is that he had a lot of frustration with TLC and their own experience on the show and what had happened to Jill. And so it wasn't just about the transgender aspect of it. It was about the fact that you're putting this on TLC, an organization that we know takes advantage of people because we're in the organization. This person is very young. So there was just a multitude of reasons why he said and did what he did. I'm not saying that it wasn't wrong. In my opinion, I feel like it's wrong to comment on someone, the decisions that they're deciding to make with their own lives, with their own body. At the same time, I also understand his concerns about some of what he had to say. So you can kind of see from both angles where it was coming from. But for people to still bring that up, to throw that in their faces, Jill and Derek's faces constantly, I think is a real problem. And I know even after he made that statement, he came out and apologized and tried to say, like, walk it back a little bit and say, I do feel this way, but I also want to be respectful of this person and I'm sorry. And it's never accepted. That apology has never been accepted. This is really sad. Jill writes, other than that, as far as I recall, there was nothing to mark the end of our involvement in the show. No speeches said and no final paperwork that we had to complete. We just finished answering whatever question we'd been asked, and the room fell into a brief silence. That's it, said the cameraman. We stood up from the couch where we'd been interviewed hundreds of times before, in the shop building turned studio that sat at the front of the big house property. Nobody from my family was there. So once we'd said our goodbyes to the film crew, we just walked back to the car and drove home. And that was it. For us, the show was over. We were out. So they think they're going to get back into the mission field. They still think they're going to get some kind of note from TLC. It's done. They're done with it. Chapter 6 ends with Derek being excited. He's feeling Jill's tummy and saying, like, everything's going to be okay, because they are about 6 weeks away from giving birth to their second son. It's not okay. It's not okay that it went down this way. I hope that Jill could be like more. I celebrate Jill. I celebrate her. Like, I'm sad that she had to leave the show. I mean, I'm glad she got the hell off the show, right? Like, I'm really happy, and I'm glad that she wrote this book, and I'm glad that she got away from her dad. But at the same time, like, yeah, there should have been a goodbye. Yeah, that kind of describes to us, like, what was Jim Bob's mindset in the background. His mindset was like, I'm pissed. I'm not happy about this. We're not doing, on the show, they're constantly celebrating everything. I mean, one of the girls could, like, get their fingernail, like, hangnail removed, and they'd be like, oh, we're gonna have a surprise, find out what hangnail the finger was on, because they always do, like, baby surprise, like, find out if it's a boy or a girl. They celebrate so many things in a God-loving, God-fearing way. When they celebrate Easter, they never have deviled eggs. They only have, like, Jesus eggs. I don't know what it is. But the point is, they celebrate a lot, but they couldn't celebrate Jill. They couldn't say thank you for making the show what it is, because she did. In my opinion, she's the best thing that came off that show. The end of this chapter makes me really angry. Chapter 7 is going to make it even worse. So I hope you guys will take a moment to join me again tomorrow as we head down another rabbit hole. Have a great night, guys.